Good evening.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for coming here. Who do we have the pleasure to be speaking with tonight?
The one you spoke to before.
Thank you. And I may refer to you as Ethium, yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Ethium, I would like to make a quick recap of some of the things we spoke with yesterday, so there's continuity to this session, okay?
Yes.
Thank you. So I learned from you that you are of the race called Essassani, and coming from the planet of the same name.
No.
No.
The people themselves are the Essassani, or what you refer to as the Eshikani. The planet itself is Essassani.
Thank you for correcting this. You told me you have many different kinds of ships.
Yeah.
Could you describe a little bit of the fleet that is at your disposal or within your culture?
We have what you refer to as motherships that are ginormous, very large in nature. They are city ships because we do not have cities on our planet. They act as our cities, our places where we move and grow. We have smaller ships. We have triangle-shaped ships that are equilateral triangles with some lights on them on the outside. We have larger ships that have crews. My ship is a scout ship. It can be manned by one person. It does not require to have a large number of people to actually operate it. Our ships act as a physicalized version of our higher minds. So each ship unto themselves are actually physicalized versions of our higher minds that are connected to each individual pilot. So in that way, they are an extension of us.
What kind of an interface do you use to connect with the ship?
Because they are, in that sense, an extension of us and me as a person. They are telepathic in nature. Unless you are particularly a being that's connected to a particular ship, you would see nothing when you look on the inside. You would just see glassy surfaces that resemble metal, but also are glossy and almost shiny like glass because they are crystalline in nature. So they are physicalized higher energy into the physical form.
I see. How do these ships move around?
Very well.
I mean, what technology or power or method is used to move them around?
What you would refer to as higher level 0-point energy is how we power everything. We do not require to take energy from the world around us. We exist purely in the state where we are constantly producing energy all the time. So we do not need to destroy anything in order to power our ships.
I see. So if you imagine that you are by Venus, you'll just appear by Venus?
Yes, not in the way that you mean it. We move more frequency because we are more closely related to the idea of spirit at this point, to non-physicality. We move at the idea of thought. We do not necessarily need a ship to be able to move across the galaxy, move across the universe, but we at this time still use them because they are useful for planets like yours that require to have a vision of beings coming down in ships.
I see. That makes sense. You mentioned the motherships are cities, and they're enormous. What kind of size or volume would a ship like that would have? How many people on it?
The mothership, the city ship that I was born on, is the size of what you would refer to Los Angeles.
Okay. Millions of inhabitants on it?
Yes.
I see. Do they move or they just rotate around the planet, those motherships?
They move.
They move. Can they move as easily and quickly as any other ship?
Not as quickly, but they can move. It requires much larger amounts of energy. So the pilots for those particular ships are carried over, and more than just one person can actually pilot it, but it requires some attunement to be able to actually connect to those particular types of ships, because they are just as telepathic, just as connected to our entire civilization as you would have to be able to have for one of the smaller scout ships that are particularly for one person. But they require a pilot.
Right. I'm not even know how to ask it, but how do you navigate in the galaxy or universe? Is there a map? Have you mapped the galaxy or the universe or anything like that?
We have a majority of our galaxy, our reality mapped. The planetary systems within inside of our Federation are all mapped. We have 85% of our galaxy in our reality mapped. We have a smaller percentage mapped in another galaxy. We more or less see the actual physical space, the physical locational variable, as a vibrational frequency that allows us to shift to particular places and start existing in those spaces instead of having to jump into subspace like has been depicted in your science fiction.
Right.
We more or less just jump from star to star. We do not require to go faster than light. We travel at the speed of thought.
Right. So you appear here, and then you'll appear at the next place where you want to be, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. The triangular craft, there's some, online on our internet, we see some triangular craft where people say maybe they belong to the government, maybe they're actual from not from the planet. Are these your crafts, or maybe there's several triangular shaped crafts?
Some of them are your government's ships that they have been able to reverse engineer, and others are ours. It is actually very easy to tell the difference between our ships and your ships. Would you like to tell me?
Yes, please tell me how I know the difference.
Our ships, because they exist as a higher frequency, a higher level of understanding, they are slightly out of phase with your reality. So many of the ships, not all of the different ships inside of our alliance, inside of the different species that exist within ours, are extra dimensional in nature. So many of those ships that you are not able to get a clear image of are actual real. The ones that you're able to get a clear image of are from your governments, from your planet Earth.
I see. And those ships I see that are from planet Earth, are they made from the same material texture that yours are, or is it made from minerals or metals from Earth?
They are terrestrial in nature. You are not able to actually replicate the same technology, the same substances that we have.
Not able to.
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you for this. I want to ask you a little bit more about your people, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit the history of the Essassani or the Essassani? Where did this people come from, and kind of what's the lineage, or anything you want to share about them?
We represent, as a species, one of the hybrids that was created as a hybridization program that is occurring on your planet at this time. We were purely physical earlier in our history. As we have progressed as a species, we became fully telepathic. We do not eat. We do not sleep. There was at one point in our history where there was a being that was born and connected our entire species telepathically. From that movement forward, we moved to a state of being fully awake and fully connected to everyone in our species. We do not speak at this time because all our communication, all of our way of interacting with each other are telepathic. Even if we're not in that location, we're able to actually connect to another being within inside of our civilization, inside of our people. So we do not require the idea of being in a specific location in order to connect with another person. Mention the way that you have cell phones.
Right.
At this point, all I have ever known, because of the way I function and where I am in the evolution of my species, I am quasi-physical in nature, more moving towards the idea of being purely non-physical.
Tell me more about that one being a connected all. When does this happen, and maybe who or what is that being?
It's in your future. She was a being. It was a woman. It was a female. She lived for 3 days. And then she died. She returned to spirit, and that was the function that she served for our whole species. To connect us and make us realize that we are in a dream, in the reality that we existed in. It helped to shift us up as a species to higher frequencies because we were all connected from that point on.
And was that being an Essassani or Shekani as well?
She was a Essassani being.
Thank you. When you say you're born, are you born like us? Like out of the womb of another female kind?
Not at this time. We used to give birth to beings like you used to. They were physically born inside of a woman because we come from you. We are your descendants. At this point in our evolution, we have 1, 2, or more beings come together, and they contribute energy to a what you would refer to as a womb outside of our bodies. All the beings that add energy to that particular being that's being created more or less stick around long enough for the child to coalesce from spirit into physical form. When they are birthed, they appear to be about 4 years old in your understanding of reality. The way you choose to develop is much slower than we do because we are much more closely related to the idea of spirit. We do not need to completely go into the idea of being an infant like you guys, like you humans.
And that 4-year-old, when it's born, I guess it appears?
Yes.
Right. So when the being appears, is it tabula rasa? Does he have thoughts? Does he have memories? Does he have understanding, knowledge already given from all the other beings that contributed to this one?
Yes. Also, when their children in our society are coming into a physical form, such as ours, in the quasi-physical nature, because we are not completely disconnected or believe the idea that we are disconnected from spirit. We remember more aspects of ourselves. We do not have the level of amnesia that humans do on your planet at this time. So we are, out the gate, have the understanding of someone who's a full-grown adult.
Right. And out of the gate, you have the innate telepathic abilities and understanding where you are in the universe, I would assume.
Yes. Yes. In this way, we can pass down understanding and knowing to our beings inside of our society much faster. So it does not take very long for those children in our society to grow and become adults.
That's very efficient.
Yes.
The one being that connected all during these, is this also the time where your species, people, switched from physical to quasi or semi-physical?
At the point when she was born, it woke us up to the dream, woke us up out of the physical dream.
It seemed like here on Earth, us humans are so deep into the physical dream, so even a simple exercise as meditating could be difficult to some. How do we give ourselves a spiritual boost, elevate ourselves to stay in a higher vibration, frequency, so to speak? Stay there.
Your beliefs. Your beliefs create your reality. They are the template level, the reality that you perceive, that the reflection that you are, the things that you perceive in your reality are there because of the beliefs that you believe you need to have in your life, the beliefs and the needs that you need for your experience of who you are and the expression of who you are as a person in this particular incarnation, in this particular life.
Thank you. I believe that I've heard that there are 5 hybrid races between the humans and the Greys. Is that correct?
Yes.
Would you give me a quick review of these 5 races and maybe a little bit of how do they come to be?
The Maz-E that we refer to, or what you refer to as the Greys, they are humans from a parallel reality that destroyed their version of Earth. So they had to mutate themselves in order to survive. Ultimately, on their version of Earth that they removed from their version of the solar system, they destroyed it. Through nuclear war and destruction, they destroyed it. So at a certain point, they embodied the idea, the energy of the extraterrestrial, and mutated themselves so far away from human, they were no longer human anymore. So they used clone bodies to actually create the idea of being human, or what they know themselves to be. But at one point in their history, reached the point where they can no longer procreate. They existed with clone bodies. They were emotionless. So therefore, they became the first hybrid race, the Maz-E. And then when the hybridization program began, they introduced the idea of genetics from humans from this reality and other ones that are similar to this reality that has viable human DNA. They were more or less still gray, but they had some emotions. So they continued on, knowing that that species was also not viable enough because they had not enough of their humanity, enough of their emotions returned to them. So then they moved on to us. We more or less represent the idea of a 50-50 split between human DNA and what you refer to as the Greys, we are the Essassani. We are Essassani.
Right.
And then the fourth hybrid race, there was more of a mix of your DNA. They're not quite to the same level that we are. You have seen them. They more or less look like human, but with much, much larger eyes and larger heads. But they were still not far enough. They had emotions. They had the idea of beings that live in reality. These were the Shalanaya. Correction.
Yeah, correction.
These are acting as mentors for the fifth hybrid race.
The Shire.
The Yayael. They are showing that race, which is the fifth hybrid race to be created and the last out of the hybrids to be created. They more or less look human, slightly larger eyes, larger craniums, slightly larger, but they're more or less human looking. They could pass as humans. And then you have the Shalanaya, the first beings that will come to live among you on your planet and eventually mix into your population and become part of it. When you become a frequency match to them,
I'm sorry, Ethan, we had a bit of a break. Could you please repeat the last portion about the Shalanaya, if I had it right?
the Shalanaya are that which you refer to as the hybrid children. They are the first ones. They are the first to make open contact with you out of the hybrid races that have been created over your many years.
The Shalanaya, are they on Earth right now?
No. They are on ships. They are on other planets. They are acclimatizing in the process right now to be able to come and live among you and become part of your society, become part of your world.
How do you teach them that?
To acclimatize?
Yeah.
At this point in the process of hybridization that you have been going through for many years, you will hear stories, less and less of them doing reproductive experiments because we are past that phase in the experience of the hybridization process. Enough of the hybrids have been created that they will come and retrieve people and bring them onto ships and allow them to interact with the hybrid children so they can understand what it's like to eat food, what it's like to send a letter. Why do you do this? Why do you do that? They do not understand these things because that is not how they were created and that is not why they exist.
I see. The Shalanaya, would they be able to procreate with humans?
Yes. They're more or less human, but they have genetics from the Greys as well as a few other extraterrestrial species.
I guess they're also telepathic?
Yes, most of them.
And I would guess their intelligence, IQ will be quite high.
Yes.
Right. So they will be able to teach us a lot of things.
Yes.
That's good. Let's see 1 second here. Yeah, okay. You said there are enough of the hybrids. Could you put a quantitative, like a number on there, like how many hybrids are required for your program?
At this time, because your population it will reduce over the next 100 years, there does not require as many hybrids to actually breed into your population and help with your evolution and their evolution to a higher state. There are a few thousand of them.
A few thousand.
Yes.
That's all. Okay. And our population shrinks. Are we talking about 10%, 50%, more than that?
You, over the next 50 of your years, will see a steep decrease in the amount of population that you have as a species.
More than 25%?
Yes.
More than 50%?
No.
Okay.
The hybrids that will come to live on your planet will come and live in small enclaves to start with. Eventually, they will mix into your population, but they need to go through an actual acclimatized process so they can exist on your planet long term.
Right. So they would live in maybe a small town or a village somewhere.
Yes. So they can start having interactions with your people. So they can get familiar and you can get familiar with the idea of beings from other world living on your planet more openly without needing to hide who they are and what they are.
And whom on earth will welcome them and help them, teach them, bring them home?
Well, many of their genetic donors or people that were their parents that had genetic material extracted from them in the past. They will live among them in those families, but they will also be open and be willing to help you to experience beings that are not look similar to you but are not quite human.
Right.
They will open up you to the idea of beings from other worlds. Because remember, when you get out here, there are many, many creatures, many beings that do not even remotely resemble or act human.
Right. So you want the most human possible interaction first, not to scare everyone, and take it from there.
Yes, that is why we do not just land our ships en masse and send a signal that says, "Take me to your leader." We go through processes such as this, where we distribute information and give people the ability to connect to particular beings so they are able to understand that they're not alone, but also understand that they are here to help you and help them to mix and help them grow as beings from that particular way. Because many of you, ultimately, in other incarnations, will be those hybrids, will be the future selves of who you are now.
Could you tell me if I'm a donor of DNA to any hybrid race?
Not in the way that you mean it. Energetic patterns.
Fair enough. So thoughts that I put out in the matrix perhaps become part of it, but not
Yes.
necessarily physical DNA.
No.
Okay. Now I know you have some specific abilities that we do not have, and I know that the channel also has some specific abilities that are so far rare within the humans. And I would imagine there's some of connection here. And I wanted to ask if you'd be able to scan my body, and tell me if there's any health issues or things I need to look at.
One moment. We would ask that you have your kidneys checked.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
No.
Thank you. Staying on the topic of health, there's talk about a device called MedBeds.
Yes.
I don't know if it's real. I believe I heard you saying there are some prototypes on Earth, but maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit.
Yes, you have very simple versions of ultimately what will become the way that you humans actually treat injuries and health problems. They will be the idea of more frequency, more light, and how you actually treat your people. You are seeing early stages of the idea that everything is frequency, so therefore everything will be treated with the idea of frequency and vibration. There are early versions of what ultimately will be on your planet as the recommended medical treatment in the future. These devices will act in such a way that it retunes your entire body to function properly, to be in the perfect health. They will ultimately be able to heal you so you live much longer. You will not require the idea of medication, of pills. All those things eventually will be gone. As it stands now, there are early versions that exist. Ultimately, they will grow and expand. You know, as beings in your world, that you do see things show up from time to time, but because of the age that you are shifting into, the level of understanding, technology, and frequency that you're shifting to, your technology that you are seeing in your reality is actually reflecting back to you that understanding in that way, in that understanding of reality you will shift it into.
Right, of course. I can't invent something I'm not in the vibration or frequency of.
Yes, and it's not in your reality unless it's relevant for you to experience those things, or that understanding is there for you to understand.
Thank you for this. Ethan, you mentioned when we spoke last time that it would require about 10% of people to be awakened in order to have a significant, meaningful change in our culture society.
Yes.
What kind of percentage are we at now, and how long till we get to 10, if at all?
Over the next few years, the rapid lift in your frequency will happen more and more quickly. You are approaching the idea of 10%, but we are also approaching the idea of open contact, which tells you that you are approaching that level. But there's still more stages to go through before you can actually interact with beings like us. We will not be the first species that you interact with, but we are part of the first contact part of things by doing what we are doing right now.
And the Shalanaya would be the first?
Well, they will be the first to come live among you openly.
Right. Who do you think would be interact with first?
Many of the beings, many of the extraterrestrials, as you have termed them, are operating at much, much higher frequencies. But you, as beings, are coming along very quickly with your frequency at this point. You have been going through a process that began the idea of open contact. There are realities where you are already in open contact, where we are fully in your society. We do not see this as necessary for this particular reality to be here right now because it's not relevant for you to have that experience just yet.
Right. Fair enough. Ethan, you said that it's your designation, Ethan. Does it have a meaning, that name?
It's ethereal. In nature, it is the idea of something familiar, but it is also the idea that it is something slightly different to make you as people to start thinking slightly different outside of the idea of what you typically know. As a name such as Ethan, Ethium gets you to think more slightly different. It is more shifting towards the idea of ethereal. So it is a combination of the idea of something you know and something you do not know.
Thank you.
I have a name. I and my people do not actually have names because we are telepathic in nature. We know each other by frequency. We do not require the idea of designations. It is here for you.
Yeah, I understand that. Thank you. I want to ask you about a question a lot of people always wonder about, and that's the Bible.
Yes.
Now it depicts, there's the first 5 books, and then there's more books, which the Jewish Bible, and then there's an addition, which is the Christian Bible, if I say it right. Who wrote the first 5 books?
The first 5 books, or what is referred to as the Old Testament, are a summarized version of the Jewish Torah. They are written by many people. They are stories that have been passed down for thousands of years down to your people today. The oral tradition, because of the Jewish people, had such a tradition of being able to write their history down, because they were some of the first people to actually have written languages that have survived to this day. Many of those understandings have been passed down over thousands of years from previous civilizations, such as the flood myth, the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
But many of the books that you refer to as the New Testament, the Bible, there were many other books that were originally in that specific book that were removed at a time in your past because it was not deemed to be in aligned with what the church at that time was preaching.
Right. Such as the Book of Enoch, for example?
Yes. Although that book itself is actually much older, it extends down from the time of the Atlanteans, as you know it.
Let's see. Can you tell me about the roots of the Jewish people? Like, where did these people come from?
They were a tribe in Egypt, as it says in your Bible, in your books. They were slightly modified in nature, genetically speaking. And then it was seen that it was necessary for the evolution of your species to have that genetic DNA in your population. So as they spread out, that DNA is in everyone. So on the planet right now, even though they may not necessarily look like it, everyone slightly has Jewish DNA, as you refer to it, in their genetics.
Yeah,
so everyone is part of that collective.
Okay. And it says in the Torah that, I believe it says that the 600,000 of them left Egypt. And I believe it says that that was only 20% of them that left. That means that 2,400,000 stayed in Egypt.
Yes.
You agree with that?
Yes.
Where are those people now? Who are the descendants of those people?
The people of Jerusalem, the people of Ethiopia.
Ethiopia.
But much of the genetics that you refer to as Jewish was passed down specifically from the Atlantean times.
So the Ethiopians are people from Ethiopia, where Ethiopia, Africa is, where the original Jewish people.
No, they are an offshoot of the actual tribe, the original tribes of Egypt that made up the idea of the Jewish people.
I see. Since when people of European descent became Jewish?
Those genetics entered into the population thousands of years ago. You know that there has been people with many, many children with mixed genetics throughout your entire history that have been passed down throughout thousands of years of your time and understanding. They're thoroughly bred into the population at this point. There is no one that does not have some sort of Jewish actual DNA in them at this time.
Thank you. What was the genetics uniqueness that the original Jewish people had that was needed to be mixed with the rest of the population of the time?
They had a particularly strong strain of DNA that came from the Atlantean civilization. In your antiquity, they paid attention to the idea of he begot this one, he begot that one. The idea is to understand that the lineage that goes back closer to the idea of the original humans that existed on your planet, to have that particularly strong amount of DNA passed down through your history that contains genetics that will help you evolve past the idea of being Homo sapien. It was necessary for those particular people to survive. That is why they have had help over the thousands of years.
Thank you. That makes sense. How long ago was Atlantis?
Which one?
I didn't know there was more than one. I'm sorry.
There were 3 prior to your civilization. The last one occurred at 10,500 BC. That was the end of their civilization.
Yeah.
Prior to that, 15,000 years prior to that particular civilization, there was the High Atlantis, where they have many technologies that eventually died off and no longer exist on your world at this time. And then the more basic one, the first Atlantis, that ultimately did destroy itself as well through a cataclysm.
The Atlanteans, some of these cultures had the means to fly.
Yes, but not in the way that you understand it.
In what way then?
Because they understood the idea of electrogravitic and electrical propulsion, they had more simple balloons in nature, but the kind of engines that they used were able to travel the magnetic fields of your planet. They were able to propel themselves in that way, so they did not require very complicated machines, because they operated more off of frequency to be able to propel themselves in to different places. They had things like donkeys. They had very simple forms of transportation.
Did they have computers?
Not in the way that you know it. They were able to harmonize with crystals. That's why those show up in many places around the world, and different connections and different ways of understanding and how to connect to stones, because inherently there's crystallized structures in your stones. So the Atlanteans themselves knew that everything was sentient, everything was frequency, so they were open to the idea that the world around them was full of information. They were able to just access it by vibrating and connecting, much in the way that the channel is actually connecting with me. He is able to connect to the idea of crystals to be able to draw information out of it. It's a telepathic communication and understanding, because the Atlanteans themselves understood the idea that everything was frequency. They were able to pass down ideas. Their schools were much different than the way that you experience school. They more or less told a story. If they wanted to learn to sew, they would be told a story, but while being in a meditative state, to actually understand the idea of what the needle does, why you do things. Everything was passed down frequency as well as telepathically to their children.
I see. But they were flesh and blood humans?
Not in the way that you are, but yes, they were flesh and blood. They were much larger in nature. They were much, much taller than you.
How come we become so short?
Your diet, partly. And it is also representative of the idea that you, as a beings, as a civilization, went so deep, so dark, down into the lower frequencies, that your body shrank.
Compressed in the sea. What happened 10,005 years ago, the demise of the recent Atlantis?
The most recent Atlantis fell several different ways. They went through the idea of a disease. They also went through the idea and lost knowledge over thousands of years of their existence. They also went through the idea of cometary impacts over the course of 20 years. And on the final day of Atlantis, there was a cometary body that entered the atmosphere of your planet and crashed into the North American ice sheet on your planet and melted most of what was there in North America at that time. The thing you refer to as the Younger Dryas impact, that was the ultimate nail in the coffin. So when that water was released out into your oceans and raised the sea level, most of what was their civilization, because they could see these things coming, they moved artifacts, equipment, storage devices all around your world to different places that they knew would not be destroyed. They could see the idea of the cataclysm happening. So they buried things like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, because they knew that temple would be necessary for the future of this planet. So it was buried on purpose.
Thank you. And the Atlanteans then managed to save themselves, or at least some of them?
Some of them.
And they passed our genetics to us, so to speak?
Yes. But also remember that you are the future incarnations of those people. You're working back through the ideas that they had at the end of that civilization. Ultimately, you will not destroy yourselves. You are working through and being able to let go of the idea of the trauma that occurred during those events at that time. You are coming out of the darkness that they began experiencing during that time period because they had destroyed themselves.
Okay, I see. Thank you. I want to ask you about the entity named Jesus.
Yeshua?
Yeshua, yes. Was this person a real being?
Yes, but not in the way that you mean it.
In what
He
way?
was a being. He did exist. But he had his genetics while he was being birthed by a human, by his mother, altered in such a way that he could remember more of who he was. He was real.
Thank you. Who or what altered his DNA?
We did.
The Essassani?
Not specifically the Essassani, but it was deemed necessary for his and other people on your planet throughout your history to have slightly altered DNA in order to actually grow and help push you and give you examples along the way of what is possible for humans to be able to actually exist as, and also be able to know that it's possible for all of you when you reach the proper frequency level to be able to actually exist beyond what you've been told throughout your history, that you need to suffer, that you need to go through the idea of destruction.
Right. So he was given, or maybe the soul requested that DNA in order to perform quote-unquote miracles, or pierce the veil, like we say it, be able to connect telepathically or to higher frequencies, yeah?
Yes, but that was in the cards for that particular incarnation, for that particular person.
Right. Could you tell me about other incarnations of Yeshua?
One moment. He existed at along the time of Buddha. In that incarnation, he existed as what you understand the Buddha's Siddhartha to be, as his son. When he moved into the idea of the lifetime as Yeshua, the Buddha incarnated along with him in that particular incarnation.
And was the Buddha a separate entity, or was it together with him?
They were together in many different lifetimes.
What was the Buddha entity incarnated with Yeshua called at that time?
Philip. They switched roles in that particular lifetime, whereas the Buddha, Siddhartha, was the teacher in that lifetime. He came back and acted as more support and allowed Yeshua to be the teacher in that particular incarnation.
I see. There are talks about Yeshua going by the Dead Sea and studying with the Essenes.
Yes.
Could you tell me a little bit about that period, please?
He spent the first few years of his life in that location. Eventually, when he reached the age of 12, he was allowed to travel with his uncle. He carried many of the customs and understandings from the Essenes into what eventually became Christianity.
And the Essenes, if I recall, from a little bit that I've studied, were a group of people living around where the Dead Sea of Masada is, and they were more of a Puritan spiritual group, yeah?
They didn't originally start out like that. They were actually originally one of the caches, one of the places where the knowledge of the Atlanteans was stored. When it was seen that their particular group was going to be destroyed, they had much of that knowledge removed. It was easier to keep the knowledge hidden from the people that were not ready for it, from it being destroyed, much in the way that the Library of Alexandria was destroyed. This way, the understanding and knowledge could be passed down later on, thousands of years later, which you are rapidly approaching the time where that understanding will be put out into the world.
Right. Are you referring to the Qumran scrolls?
More scrolls than that. That was a small fraction, and many stories that were rewritten over thousands of years.
I see. Okay, give me a second. So the I just want to understand this because I might have missed it. There was a group in the Atlanteans that later incarnated or genetically became the Essenes?
No. Many of the masters that had knowledge passed down to them in their particular lifetimes were incarnated into that particular group. Physically, no. They were much in the way that you are humans, but they had more of an understanding because those particular souls decided to incarnate into that particular group to pass down and continue the knowledge. But this happened over thousands of years. They were originally a group of survivors that did breed into your population and began to look more or less human, but with the knowledge that was passed down from the Atlantean times.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense, yeah. What happened to the Essene DNA? Is it still around?
Yes, but not nearly as prevalent as it was 2,000 years ago. It was a small group.
Right. Where do I find people today? I don't want to say have the knowledge of these scenes, but who are, how would I say it, spiritually advanced, open for contact, perhaps telepathic. Is there a group like that on Earth today?
You are all becoming like that. It is the time and place for this understanding to come forward. So the beings, the people that were suppressing the knowledge, those things that you refer to as the mystery schools in your history, in your society, in your people, that was more or less the knowledge that was being suppressed and made to seem bad. In nature, that is the essence of what the Atlanteans knew. But because you have reached an age where they can no longer suppress that information or that understanding, it is coming out en masse in your society.
I see. Thank you. How do we uncover that knowledge? Where is it?
It's all around you. It's more or less an understanding, a way of connecting to nature and reality, that it's becoming more and more prevalent into your society. Those beings, such as the channel in front of you, is acting as a way to spread that understanding, because this is knowledge that he has been compelled to learn as he's grown, as he's moved through his life. The understanding that moves along with him now and being shared to you is stuff that was put into his mind, that he needed to learn these things at those particular times. So now, when he has reached this point, he's able to share that understanding to more people.
I see. Thank you. And I guess I'll connect the dots here. If we're going to see a population decrease, maybe 25%, maybe more, I guess people will start thinking carefully about their lives and where they are if people are gone quickly.
The ones that are healthy will stick around, but you will see a large portion of the older population on your planet start to die off. You are also seeing on the planet right now a decrease in birth rate around your planet.
Yeah, I see it. I mean, there's barely any kids on the street anymore, at least where I live.
This is necessary at this time. Ultimately, the population will move down. Many of the souls that are on the planet right now, the reason why you have such a large population currently is because you have many souls going through a rapid evolution on your planet right now. That is why you have swollen to such a large population. Ultimately, the population will shrink, which is not necessarily a negative thing. And also, many beings on this planet that are human right now will help in the colonization of other planets. That is also part of the reason why there's such a large population on your planet right now.
Are we talking about millions of humans going to other planets?
Yes. Millions and millions.
Wow, okay. Well, I guess we'll need the technology for that to get there.
It will not take you as long as you think it will to get there.
Okay, well, I assume it's not going to be with a solid fuel rocket technology.
No. Technology that will be delivered to you and understanding that will be delivered to you will help you reach planets that have been set aside for your people to be able to actually colonize, so you do not destroy yourselves like you have in the past.
Yeah. And I guess they have the oxygen and everything that's needed, or maybe
Yes.
bubble.
Yes, the planets have similar size, similar gravity, similar environments that you as beings can live on.
What's the point? I saw today or yesterday there was another big rocket that blew up. What's the point of even trying this technology, of knowing that we're going to get this technology can't even take us to the moon properly? What's the point of not just waiting for the proper technology?
To show that you are able to get out into the universe. It is there symbolically to show that the path that you have been moving down does not actually work. So there must be a new way.
I see. Yeah. I mean, the technology we have now is not really going to take us anywhere anytime soon. Okay.
No, but there will be rapid evolution of your technology in the years to come. You are at the beginning stages of many things. It just takes time and process for them to grow to the level where they need to be in order to actually carry you to the stars.
Right.
You as a species, as beings, need to also evolve. That is why we are here, to help you through that process, because we have also gone through a similar process, but not to the level that you experience. We are here as guides. We are here to help you. We are here to pass down information and knowledge so you are able to grow and do it in a healthy way.
Thank you. You know, we get this estimates of about 8 billion humans on this planet. But I have no clue where this estimate comes from. What is your estimate about the current population humans on this planet?
You do have a population close to this idea of that size, but not as big as you think.
Right. What do you think our population will stable at?
Closer to the idea of 1.5 billion,
And
ultimately.
over
But this is in your future. This is not anytime soon.
right. So 100 years from now?
Further out.
Okay. The mRNA technology that a lot of people receive by way of injection, does that have anything to do with reduction of population? There's a lot of people that believe that.
No.
What is then would be the reason? You said all people will die off. All people do die off. I'm just trying to wrap my head around how would that decrease in population would happen. It could happen in only two ways. One is existing people die, and the second is less born.
You are going through a time period where you are seeing less children born around your planet. And many of the older generations are starting to die off, as you understand it. So it's leaving a healthier stock. You have seen it even in your particular reality. When a population has grown too large, you do not have healthy genetics that stick around.
I understand. Okay, thank you for this. This puts my mind at ease.
It's not necessarily negative. Don't take us when we say this as this being negative in any way.
Right. Would anyone that want to have children will be able and allowed to?
Yes.
So it's more of a matter of choice. We're moving a society to a choice of having less children, and I guess in the West the average age is in Canada it's about 40, the average age.
Yes.
But in undeveloped countries it could be as young as 18.
Yes.
So the undeveloped country will have more people for a longer time, and the developed country will, according to this, will shrink in population much faster, correct?
You already see this happening.
Right.
Many of the what you call developed countries around your world are starting to see much smaller birth rates. You're already starting to see these things happen. There are countries around your planet where there has been times in the last few years where there is no children born for months.
Right, like Japan or Korea.
Or Italy.
Or Italy. I didn't know that. Ethan, it seemed like, and this is really my final question for you this evening, if that's okay.
Yes.
It seems like, everything we talk about is unbelievable and fantastic, and I can't wait for it to happen. But at the same time, when I look around me, we have wars. We have wars that seem to be religious wars. We have people screaming at each other that they're wrong or they're wrong. So the gap sometimes seems to me so impossible to overcome at this point. How do we get from here to there as a planetary society where, we're not going to fly to the stars if we keep skirmishing with each other, right?
Think of what you are going through right now as a final test. When you reach the end of a semester, when you reach that time period where you need to test your knowledge and your understanding, that you get to move on to the next level, you are technologically and emotionally, spiritually speaking, working through old ideas of war, of destruction, of cataclysm. It's down to the individual person to decide how they would like to view these situations. What does that bring up inside of you that you will learn to work through? It's a case-by-case basis. Each person is shifting their own frequency rate. The more they can view what is happening outside of them, in the world around them, from a neutral place, they are able to more shift into a positive place and understanding so they can grow. Because not everyone will shift up to that higher frequency.
And those who do not will find their way out.
Yes, one way or another.
Are you familiar with Dolores Cannon?
Yes.
Dolores spoke of as the earth will split, where the people that are shifting the higher frequency will no longer interact or even be aware of the people who have not, and vice versa.
Yes.
Is that a physical thing, or is just how our reality?
It's a reality split.
Right.
You have the people that are existing at higher frequencies because you have been in the process of splitting off frequency-wise for the last 10 to 15 years of your understanding into higher frequency. You have been on the train tracks, and you are at this time still close enough that you can see those people at lower frequency, lower vibrations. Eventually, those beings and the reflections of those negative aspects of themselves will branch off into a lower level. The realities that match their frequency, they will exist in.
So they branch off to what level?
To a lower frequency. They will branch off into realities that match them frequency-wise, that matches that version and how they see reality.
Right. Okay, thank you. To summarize, do you have any advice on how we can switch to a higher frequency?
Be yourself. Naturally, when you're yourself, you will naturally emit a higher frequency. This is why anytime those who have watched the Bashar, him say, follow your excitement. Naturally, when you follow that excitement, it will raise your frequency and will allow you to shift to a higher frequency. It brings everything up that is necessary for you to deal with, positive and negative.
Thank you very much, Ethan. That's all I have for today.
Good day.
Good day. Thank you.